UShaka Stad, a small coastal town in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, was known for its lush landscapes, warm climate, and vibrant culture. The town, surrounded by sugarcane fields and rolling hills, held a dark secret whispered about by the elders. In the heart of the town, where the moonlight barely touched, lived the Boogeyman. The story begins with Zoma, a young girl who had just moved to UShaka Stad with her family. Zoma's father, Mr. Dlamini, had found work at a local sugar mill, while her mother, Mrs. Dlamini, busied herself with tending to their new home. Zoma, with her curious nature, loved exploring the nearby forests and fields, often wandering far beyond the boundaries set by her parents. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to twinkle, Zoma ventured into the woods. The forest was thick with the scent of wildflowers and the sound of crickets chirping. As she walked deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in around her, casting long, eerie shadows on the ground. Zoma had heard the stories of the Boogeyman from her friends at school, but she dismissed them as mere tales to scare children. However, as the darkness grew thicker, she couldn't shake off a growing sense of unease. She decided it was time to head back home, but as she turned to leave, she realized she was lost. Panic set in, and Zoma began to run, the shadows seeming to follow her every step. Suddenly, she tripped over a root and fell, scraping her knee. As she sat on the ground, trying to catch her breath, she heard a rustling sound behind her. She turned slowly, and there, standing at the edge of the clearing, was a figure cloaked in darkness. The figure moved closer, and Zoma could see its eyes glowing red in the darkness. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The Boogeyman, with his long, gnarled fingers and menacing presence, reached out towards her. Just as he was about to grab her, a bright light flashed, and the figure disappeared into the night. Zoma was left alone in the clearing, trembling with fear. She quickly got up and ran home, her heart pounding in her chest. When she burst through the door, her parents were waiting for her, worry etched on their faces. She tried to explain what had happened, but the words wouldn't come out. Mr. Dlamini held her close, trying to calm her down. "It's okay, Zoma. You're safe now. You're home," he whispered soothingly. Zoma spent the night tossing and turning, haunted by the red eyes and the dark figure. She knew she had to find out more about the Boogeyman and the secrets he held. The next day, she resolved to visit Gogo Kumalo, the town's elder and keeper of ancient stories. Gogo Kumalo lived in a small, thatched hut at the edge of the town. Her home was filled with herbs, potions, and artifacts from a time long past. Zoma approached the hut nervously, unsure of what to expect. She knocked on the door, and a frail, yet strong voice called out, "Come in, child." Zoma entered and was greeted by the sight of Gogo Kumalo sitting by the fire, stirring a pot of herbal tea. The old woman looked up, her eyes twinkling with wisdom. "Oh, Zoma. I was expecting you," she said with a knowing smile. Zoma was taken aback. "You were? How did you know I was coming?" Gogo Kumalo chuckled. "The spirits whispered to me. They told me you had encountered the Boogeyman. Sit, and I will tell you his story." Zoma sat down, eager to hear the tale. Gogo Kumalo began, her voice steady and calm. "Many years ago, UShaka Stad was a peaceful village, untouched by darkness. But one day, a stranger arrived. His name was Jobo, a man shrouded in mystery. He claimed to have come from a distant land, seeking refuge. The villagers welcomed Jobo with open arms, offering him food and shelter. He was a skilled healer, and his presence seemed to bring prosperity to the village. However, as time passed, strange things began to happen. Livestock disappeared, crops withered, and children fell ill. The villagers grew suspicious of Jobo, believing he was the cause of their misfortune. They confronted him, but he denied any wrongdoing. In their anger and fear, they drove him out of the village, cursing him as he left. Jobu wandered the forests, his heart filled with bitterness and rage. He sought revenge on the villagers who had wronged him. Through dark magic, he transformed himself into the Boogeyman, a creature of the night who thrived on fear and darkness. He vowed to haunt UShaka Stad, seeking to instill terror in the hearts of those who had betrayed him. Gogo Khumalo paused, letting the weight of the story sink in. Zama listened intently, her fear mingled with fascination. "Is there any way to stop him?" she asked. The old woman nodded. "The Boogeyman can be defeated, but it requires great courage and a pure heart. The villagers must come together and face their fears. Only then can they break the curse and free Jobu from his torment." Zama felt a newfound determination. She knew she had to help the village. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Gogo Khumalo handed her a small pouch filled with herbs. "These herbs will protect you from the Boogeyman. Gather the villagers and bring them to the clearing where you saw him. Together, you must confront him and show that you are not afraid." Zama thanked Gogo Khumalo and hurried back to the village. She knew it wouldn't be easy to convince the villagers, but she was determined to try. She went from house to house, telling her story and urging everyone to join her. At first, many were skeptical, but as she spoke with passion and conviction, they began to believe. The night of the confrontation arrived. The villagers gathered in the clearing, armed with torches and the protective herbs given by Gogo Khumalo. Zama stood at the front, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. She knew they had to stand together if they were to defeat the Boogeyman. As the moon rose high in the sky, a cold wind swept through the clearing. The shadows grew longer, and the air was thick with tension. Suddenly, the Boogeyman appeared, his red eyes glowing menacingly. He moved towards the villagers, his presence sending chills down their spines. Zama stepped forward, holding the pouch of herbs tightly. "We are not afraid of you," she shouted, her voice echoing through the night. The Boogeyman hesitated, taken aback by the courage in her voice. The villagers joined in, chanting and holding their torches high. "We are not afraid. We are not afraid." The Boogeyman roared in anger, but the villagers stood their ground. The protective herbs created a barrier, preventing him from getting any closer. Zama continued to lead the chant, her voice growing stronger with each passing moment. As the villagers' courage grew, the Boogeyman's power began to wane. The darkness around him started to dissipate, and his form became less imposing. He let out a final, anguished cry before collapsing to the ground. The villagers watched in awe as the Boogeyman's body transformed. The dark, menacing figure melted away, revealing a man lying on the ground. It was Jobu, his face etched with sorrow and regret. Gogo Khumalo emerged from the forest, her eyes filled with compassion. She knelt beside Jobu and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are free now," she whispered. Jobu looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he said weakly. "I am sorry for the pain I caused." Gogo Khumalo nodded. "It is time to heal and forgive. The village must come together and move forward." The villagers gathered around, offering words of forgiveness and understanding. They knew that fear and anger had driven Jobu to his dark path, but now it was time to let go of the past. Zama watched as the village began to heal. She felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, knowing she had played a part in breaking the curse. The Boogeyman was no more, and UShaka Stad could finally live in peace. As the sun rose the next morning, the villagers celebrated their victory. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger, united by their shared experience. Zama knew that the memory of the Boogeyman would linger, but it would serve as a reminder of the power of courage and community. Years passed, and Zoma grew up to become a wise and respected leader in UShaka Stad. The story of the Boogeyman became a legend, told to children as a reminder of the importance of facing their fears and standing together. The village thrived, its people united by a bond forged in the fires of adversity. Zoma often visited Gogo Kumalo, who continued to share her wisdom with the younger generations. The old woman lived to see the village flourish, her heart filled with pride for the courage and resilience of its people. And so, the tale of the Boogeyman of UShaka Stad became a cherished part of the village's history, a testament to the power of bravery, unity, and forgiveness. The shadows that once haunted the village were replaced by the light of hope and the strength of community, ensuring that UShaka Stad would remain a place of peace and prosperity for generations to come.